grab a cup of tea because I am back with quite a horrendous Dates with Kate story time for you today. I don't know why, but I've put off filming this particular date for a while. I think this is mainly because I met this guy in real life, as opposed to all the other kind of dates that I've spoken about in this dating series. I met most of them on like Tinder or Bumble online, but yeah, the time has come where I should tell you this story. I think I've given it enough time that he won't perhaps come and check my channel. If he does, that would be really embarrassing. I'm gonna call the guy Ben just to hide his identity today. Okay, so throwing it back to early 2017, I'd recently come out of a really serious relationship. I was due to get married. I had everything, like my whole wedding was planned, but the relationship ended, and I was heartbroken for a really long time, as I'm sure you guys can imagine. Kind of like dating and meeting other men was at the bottom of my list of things that I wanted to do at the time. It was like not a priority in my life at all. I just wanted time to like focus on myself and do things that made me happy, and trying to move on from the relationship. But I went out one night with my sister and her fiance, and we went to a gig. I was trying to like just let my hair down as much as possible on this night. I was doing tequila shots, I was eating burgers, I did not have men on my mind at all. And honestly, the thing I was most focusing on that evening was not trying to cry at all the songs, because I was like heartbroken. But this particular gig that I went to, the band, it has a very male audience. Like 80% of the people watching this gig were men, and it's a very small intimate pub, and I was stood on a booth right at the back of the pub. I'm under 5 foot, I cannot see anything at gigs normally, so I was like stood up on a booth, and I could see the whole audience and the band. And there was just this guy in the audience who immediately caught my attention, and we just had constant eye contact. Obviously, he was standing in front of me, like there was no reason at all for him to keep turning around and looking, but he did it like every 2 minutes. I swear he'd look round, just check I was still there, and like we'd just have this eye contact, and I was just like, what is happening? Like, there's a guy looking at me, he's really hot. So this happened for like an hour or so, and I eventually ended up telling my sister and her fiance Luke. I was like, that guy keeps looking at me, and they started watching him, and they were like, yeah, oh my god, he's looking at you, he's looking at you. And so Luke went to the loo, and then on his way back he kind of just stood behind this guy and was like, is this him? And I was like, yeah. And then he tapped him on the shoulder, and I was like, no, don't talk to him. I think Luke ended up saying something along the lines of, do you fancy her? Like, you should go and talk to her, basically. And so the guy did. He came up to me, I was still standing on the booth, and he was just like, hi, my name's Ben, do you want to come and dance? So I said, yeah. So he took me all the way to the front of the gig, like literally, he got my hand and he took me all the way to the front, and we danced and we sang and we had a cheeky snog, and I was just like, what is happening? Like, this is like the least thing I would have expected to have happened tonight. Did not go out expecting this to happen at all, to have male attraction, let alone ended up dancing and kissing this guy. But it was really lovely, and I felt like happiness and a sense of like, things are going to get better, like I can get through this breakup, I can fancy people can fancy me, this is going to be great. So yeah, we swapped numbers at the end of the night, and I ended up texting him a couple of days later being like, do you want to go for a cup of tea? And he said yes. So literally the weekend after, we went to the book club in Shoreditch. Yeah, we learnt about each other, we had a nice chat, we ended up kissing quite a lot more, which I really wasn't expecting. Also, I hadn't really come out about the fact that me and my ex had broken up at this point online. Like, I left it quite a while before I told you guys about it, just because I don't know, I needed it to sink in for myself before I shared it with everyone else. But I remember being really nervous that someone who watches my channel could walk past and see us kissing, and yeah, it was all very exciting, but it was all very like raw and intense for me. There was a point on this date where he asked me like when my last relationship was, and I was really honest with him. I was like, look, I really recently come out of an intense, like, serious relationship. We're actually still living together, like, we're trying to work out the living situation. This is really hard. But he was really nice about it. He was like, you know what, that's really brave of you. You could have made up an excuse, but I really appreciate you being honest. And it was just great. He had loads of prospects. He like owned a couple of properties. He had a great job. He was very family orientated. Everything was going great. He did say one thing on that date. He wanted to go travelling later that year. He was like, I need to escape and I need to go and find myself. And I was like, wow, like I'd love to do that. That's like really brave of you, just to like pack everything in and just up and go. And he was like, yeah, like I want to be gone for a year. That was his goal. Okay, so we said goodbye, and then a couple of weeks later we had our second date, and this was where things just got, I can't even. I also just want to say here, on my way to our first date, I fell over in the street and it was really bad. Like I really hurt myself. I can't even remember the last time before that I'd fallen over. I had one really big like boot heels because he was so tall, I wanted to like feel a bit more confident. But yeah, I proper stacked it in the street. I had like cuts all up my hand. I had a really bruised leg. Loads of stuff fell out of my bag, and this man on the street was like helping me gather it all. It was really embarrassing. And I was just in my head, I was like, oh well, at least it happened now and not on the date. Like it's just my luck for that to have happened. Okay, so a couple of weeks later we met up for our second date. He chose a bar in Angel in Islington. I think that was kind of nearby where he lived, but I was very adamant that I wasn't going to go back to his. Like I totally wasn't ready for that yet. But I think he had been drinking all day, so he was quite tipsy by the time we met up at around like 8 or 9 o'clock, which again is very late for a date. In my head I remember texting my mum being like, oh, he keeps pushing the time back. I hope he doesn't like expect me to like just end up at his after this because it's so late and because he lives nearby, because I'm totally not into that. And she was like, just see how it goes. And I was like, no. We met up, we had a cocktail, and then we decided to go to another pub. It was all going great. Like the chat was great, we were really flirty. I think we'd had a snog again by this point, and we went to this other pub and it was quite busy and there were no seats free, so we ended up like standing by the bar for like a drink or so. And then after a while I spotted that some seats had become available, but it was in like a booth and there were a couple sitting on one side, and I was like, should we go and ask them if we can like squeeze in the other side? And he was like, yeah. So we went and asked, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. So we were sitting in a booth with this other couple opposite us, and me and him were chatting loads. But he was quite like, I guess I am as well, he's quite like animated when he was talking, and also very drunk. And there was one point where he went like this and he knocked over my like full glass of rosé, which is fine, but it went all over the guy opposite, and we were both so apologetic. We were like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, this is terrible, this is terrible. This guy looked really uncomfortable and really unhappy, but we were trying to do everything we could to like rectify the situation. I jumped up and got some tissue from behind the bar and like gave it to him. Ben, my date, I was about to say his real name then, he went up to the bar to get me another glass of drink because he spilt mine, and he also got like a shot each for all of us. He got a tequila shot, I think. He got 4 of them, one each to apologise for the couple opposite us and one for us, and we ended up doing all the shots all together. I do remember though the guy didn't want to do the shot. He was very like, no, I don't do tequila, I don't do shots. Like the guy was obviously upset that this had happened, even though it wasn't anyone's fault really. But there was this time when me and this girl were alone in the booth opposite. Her partner had gone to the toilet to like wipe his trousers down. My date had gone to the bar to get us some drinks, and I kind of said to her like, oh, are you on a date? Like this is my second date with this guy, like it's going really well. And she was like, oh, we're not really dating, like this guy's a colleague, but we quite fancy each other and we're just seeing where it can go. But so I like, me and her had like a bond. We had a bit of a bond, like girl bond on a date, which was really nice. I love doing that. So anyway, this guy came back, her date came back, my date came back. I don't know how, but the conversation opened up again and we were all talking as like a double date kind of with these random people that we'd never met before, and it was really nice. And we got talking about ages, and I said to my date, I was like, I don't actually know how old you are, like let's see. And he told me, and I was like, oh, I don't believe you. I think he said he was like 35 or something, I really can't remember. And I was like, oh, I don't believe you. And he was like, no, really. And he gave me his ID, his like driving lessons, and I saw his signature. Now I don't know, I was obviously quite tipsy, and I was just like, oh, your signature, Like, he wrote out his first name and his second name in like his handwriting as his signature. And I didn't make a joke of it, but I just kind of like giggled and was like, oh, I've never seen someone do that before. Like, normally people just write like their first initial and then their surname in like a squiggle. Like, that's a signature, but he'd literally just written out his whole entire name. And the girl was like, oh, let me see. So I showed her and she was like, oh no, that's really sweet. And then she was like, you've got really nice handwriting, to my date Ben. And he was like, what do you mean? And she was like, oh, you know, it's like really neat. It's actually quite feminine. I don't know what happened, but he flipped. It was honestly like Jekyll and Hyde. He started shouting obscenities at this girl across the table. I don't even know what happened, but it got really out of hand. He was shouting, he was swearing, he was getting really defensive about the fact that he had feminine handwriting. And I was just like, what the hell is happening? It got so bad that I got my phone out and ordered an Uber. I was like, I can't stay in this situation any longer. Like, I don't know this guy really. I don't know what's happening. He's being really angry. He was just very angry out of nowhere. I ordered this cab. The cab was coming. And he was still shouting, I think now, at the guy that she was with. And I came over to her side and I was like, I am so sorry. I have no idea what's happening. And she was like, he is not worth it. He's just not worth it at all. And I was like, thank you. I'm going to go. And I literally ran out and got a cab. I obviously didn't say goodbye to him because he was so angry and in such a fluster. And it honestly just come out of nowhere. I was just really like, what has just happened? And he texted me after the date, which I can read out to you. 12:30 in the morning, he texted me. I did not like that woman. Other than that, I enjoyed everything. Crying, laughing face. Hope you get home safely. And then 6 minutes later, when I hadn't replied, he said, sorry if it made you feel uncomfortable. I never texted him back, obviously, because I was just like, I don't even know what to say. You should have been on your best behaviour that night, and it was just out of nowhere, and it was really scary for me as well. It was actually like the day before New Year's that we had our second date, and he texted me a couple of weeks later saying, I hope you had a lovely New Year's despite the poor evening's entertainment the night before. I guess it really was embarrassing considering I haven't heard from you, lol. Sorry about that and all the best. So I guess he realised that what he did was not cool and like just not on. There was actually something he said on the first date, and I think early on in the second date as well, which made me be like, trigger signs were like flashing. He'd said a couple of times about some best friends that he used to have, like on different occasions, that he'd fallen out with, and apparently they'd fallen out because of things that these other people had done. I remember texting my mum at the time being like, one thing that did like ring bells was the fact that he doesn't have many friends because he seems to have fallen out with them all, and I should have really picked up on that then, because if it's so easy to like get into arguments and get offended, then I don't think it was his friend's fault, the reason that they were all falling out. I think it was probably to do with him. But yeah, I haven't heard from him since, obviously. I don't know if he ended up going travelling and finding himself. I hope he did. I hope he found himself and found some like anger management classes to go alongside that. Do leave me a comment down below if something like this has ever happened to you on a date. I highly doubt it, and I really hope not, because I wouldn't want any of you to be in a situation like I was. Like, I can't even begin to think what had happened if I'd stayed on that date or if I had gone back to this guy's house. I should also say that I purchased a rape alarm after this date. I bought 2 of them just to carry around on future dates, in case I was in a situation where I wanted to get out and I wanted to raise awareness. So yeah, safety, keep safe girls, and I will see you soon. Mwah.